that it is a long hydrocarbon chain with a terminal carboxyl group. Okay, so this is the one, this structure I think I have shown earlier. So you have the methyl group here. So this methyl group CH3, CH2, CH2, so on. It can be any number. It may be 10, it may be 12, 14, and all that. And lastly, to that long hydrocarbon chain, a terminal carboxyl group is attached. Then we call it as the fatty acids. That is what we discussed it. Then we have discussed that the nomenclature that to the parent compound hydrocarbon chain finally is replaced with the AOIC-OIC. Then it becomes a fatty acid. We discussed it. Then these are some of the fatty acids that we have seen it. Okay. Then we discuss about triacylglycerols in that to a glycerol molecule, 3 fatty acids are linked. Okay, so this is how the fatty acid or the triacylglycerols are formed. Okay, let me just show you the slide. I think I did not give you this picture earlier. Okay, can you see this structure? Is the structures clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So you have a glycerol molecule here. Okay, you can see my cursor now, the cursor moving. So this glycerol, you have it. So CH2OH, CHOH, CH2OH. So this is the glycerol molecule. Then, so there are 3 hydroxyl groups. Okay, OH group attached to carbon number 1, carbon number 2, and carbon number 3. So these OH groups can combine with the fatty acid with the carboxyl group of the fatty acids. Okay, so here the oxygen is coming from the glycerol, then the acidic group, carboxyl group, is coming from the fatty acid. Okay, so here the OH group from the carboxyl group of the fatty acid and 1 hydrogen from the OH group of the glycerol is removed as water molecule. Okay, then this acyl group, the fatty acyl chain, it is linked to the glycerol. Okay, since the linkage here, it is formed by combination of an alcohol and acid. Okay, alcohol is coming from the glycerol, acid is coming from the fatty acid. So it's a combination of an acid and alcohol, and this type of linkage we call it as the ester linkage. Okay, I mentioned this ester anhydride ether linkages. Okay, so here ester means it is a linkage formed between an acid and the alcohol. Okay, so here it is an alcohol, glycerol is an alcohol, fatty acid, it is the acidic group. So since the linkage is between acid and alcohol, we call it as an ester linkage. Okay, so since there are 3 OH group in the glycerol, 3 fatty acids can be linked. So this is 1, 2, 3, 3 fatty acids are there. This is linked. Okay, finally you got the triacylglycerol. Tri, it means 3. Acyl is this chain, that fatty acid chain, it is the acyl chain. Then you have the glycerol, so it is called as the triacylglycerol. Okay. Same thing here. This the second picture photograph. It is also of this one. So first it is the glycerol. Now this is combining the 3 fatty acids are linked to this. So you have the triacylglycerol. Okay. So this we have already discussed it. Then we discuss about the properties of the triacylglycerols. Okay, so first we discuss the physical properties, that they are insoluble, then but soluble in this one. Then in hot alcohol they are readily soluble, but in cold alcohol they are not soluble. They are tasteless, odorless. All that physical properties we discuss it. Then we also discuss the chemical properties like the soap formation, iodination, okay, hydrolysis. So this we have already discussed. Saponification, that is the formation of the soap from the triacylglycerols. We have discussed it. This happens when the triacylglycerols react with the potassium hydroxide or the sodium hydroxide. Then it forms the glycerol will be released out. Then sodium or the potassium salt or the fatty acids will be formed. And this sodium or the potassium salt or the fatty acids, we call it as the soap. In that process, we call it as saponification. We also discuss about the saponification value that indicates the molecular weight of the fatty acid or the chain length of the fatty acid, that we have discussed it. Then we discuss about the iodine number. So iodine number, it comes because the fatty acids in the triacylglycerols, it contains the double bond. So these double bonds can absorb the iodine. The iodine can be linked to the fatty acid chain, the hydrocarbon chain of the fatty acid, where there is a double bond. So the amount of the iodine absorbed will depend on the number of the double bonds present. So that means it is an indication, or it is an index of the degree of unsaturation. That is, up to what extent that there is a unsaturated double bond. Okay, so we discuss all this. Then we discuss about the rancidity. Rancidity, it is just because that the bacterial enzymes, or it is the molecular oxygen, it can attack the triacylglycerols to break the fatty acids from the glycerols, or the molecular oxygen can also act on the double bonds. Okay, so through the formation of the epoxides. So that is the deterioration. So rancidity, it is just the deterioration of the triacylglycerols. This we have discussed it, and in that we have discussed that there are maybe two types of the rancidity. One is the hydrolytic rancidity, another one is the oxidative rancidity. We have already discussed it. Then we discuss about the acid number. That means it indicates the amount of the free fatty acid present in the triacylglycerols. Okay. Then we also discuss about the RM number. The difference between acid number and RM number is that in case of the RM number, it measures the volatile fatty acids. Okay? It measures the volatile fatty acids. So volatile fatty acids are those which have the short chain. It may be 2 carbon, 4 carbon, or 6 carbon. So if the fatty acid is of the short chain, they are referred as the volatile fatty acids. So that's the difference between the acid number and RM number. We have already discussed this. Okay, next is the waxes. So today we are starting with the waxes. So waxes, we all know that is a type of the simple lipids. Okay, there are type of the simple lipids. The first type we have seen is the oils and fats. The second one is the wax. Okay, so here the wax, it differs from the oils and fats in that the alcohol present here is not the glycerol. So in case of the oils and fats, what we have seen is that the alcohol present is the glycerol. But in case of the wax, it is not the glycerol, but it is a low monohydroxyl alcohol. Okay. So waxes, these are the esters of the higher fatty acids with the long chain monohydroxyl alcohol. So here in this case, since it is a monohydroxyl, means only one hydroxyl group is present. That means only one fatty acid will be present or will be esterified to the alcohol. Okay, so here that alcohol is a long hydrocarbon chain alcohol, and secondly, the fatty acid present is of the long chain. Okay. So in case of the oils and fats, it may be short chain fatty acids, but in case of the wax, it is a long chain fatty acid. Second is that there is a difference in the type of the alcohol. Okay. So they are closely related to the acylglycerols, that is the oils and fats, in structure and properties. So because they are also the simple lipids, so definitely they will have a very similar properties with that of the acylglycerols. In waxes, the fatty acids which may be saturated or unsaturated. So the fatty acid present, it may be saturated or unsaturated. It is the same case with the oils and fats also. So same with that of the oils and fats, though in wax also, that fatty acids present, it may be saturated or it may be unsaturated. Only thing is that they have a long chain. So this number of the carbon atoms in that fatty acid, it may range from 14 to 36. So it is a long chain fatty acids. Okay, so this is one. Secondly, the alcohol also have the long chain. That the alcohol, it also has 16 to 30 carbon atoms. Okay, just 1 minute. Okay, so these are some of the differences. That the first is that the alcohol present, it is a long hydrocarbon chain with a one hydroxyl group. Then second is that the fatty acids present, it is a long chain fatty acid. Okay. Then here the melting point of the waxes are generally higher than those of the triacyl glycerols. So compared to the triacyl glycerols, the melting point of the wax will be higher. This is because that the hydrocarbon chain is higher, is longer. Okay, it is a long chain fatty acid and a long chain this one alcohol. So because of that, the melting point will be higher in case of the wax compared to the triacyl glycerols. Okay. Now this is one example of the wax. So now here you have the alcohol. So see the alcohol here, that you have CH3 group, that is methyl group, or the last carbon. Then CH2, you have the 28 carbons. Okay. Then CH2 again. Then this is OH group. So that means how many carbons are there? There are 30 carbons in this alcohol. That is the 1,3-econtanol. Okay. So this is an monohydroxyl alcohol. Okay, so with this, that another fatty acid is linked. So here this fatty acid, you have the CH3. Okay, that is the CH3. It is the omega carbon. Then CH2 14. So CH2 there are 14. Then you have the carboxyl group. Okay, so that means it is a 16 carbon fatty acid. So a 16 carbon fatty acid, we in general we call it as the palmitic acid. So this fatty acid is linked to an alcohol. Okay, so here the linkage is again a ester linkage. So that means the fatty acid, it is linked to an alcohol. So definitely this will be an simple lipid. There is no other additional group. It is just a product formed by the fatty acid and alcohol. So this is an example of the simple lipid. But here in this case, the alcohol present is not the glycerol. It is another alcohol, so it is an wax. It is an example of the wax. What are the functions? Okay, the functions, the physiological functions of the wax. So why the living system, it may be the plants or the animals, why the living system, it produces this type of the compound. Okay, they are produced because they will be having certain specific functions in the living organism. Only then they are produced. Okay, so first is that in marine organisms, they are the chief storage form of the metabolic fuel. Okay, so in case of the plants or higher animals or the terrestrial animals, we have seen that the chief storage form of the energy is triacyl glycerols. Okay, but in case of the marine organisms, the chief storage form of the energy, it happens to be the wax. Okay, next, that the skin gland of the vertebrates secrete wax to protect their hair and skin and to keep them pliable, lubricated, and waterproof. Okay, so in case of the vertebrates, that the skin glands they are producing just to protect this hair, skin, and to lubricate and all that. Okay. Third, birds, particularly the waterfowl, secretes the waxes from their preen glands to make their feeder water repellent. Okay, that feeder has to be water repellent. So that is possible because of the secretion of the waxes. Okay, so that it has this specific function. Next is that in case of the plants, the shiny leaves of the holly, rhododendrons, poison ivy, and many tropical plants are coated with a layer of the waxes, which protects against the parasites and prevent excessive evaporation of the water. So in case of the plants, it is produced and it forms a protected layer. So this layer, it protects these plants from the parasites, and also it prevents the excessive loss of the water by evaporation. Then this wax, it also has some industrial applications. Okay? So that is, the waxes find a variety of applications in the pharmaceutical, cosmetic, and other industries. How they are find application, that is, they are widely used in the manufacture of the lotions, ointments, and polishes. Okay, so these waxes, they are used for manufacturing certain materials like the boot polishes, the ointments, and the lotions. Okay, so like that, they have the specific functions in the living organism, and they also have some importance in the industry. Okay, so that's all about the simple lipids. Now we are moving to the compound lipids. Okay, compound or the complex lipids. So earlier we have discussed it based on the additional group present. Okay, additional group means the groups in addition to the fatty acid and alcohol. So in addition to the alcohol and fatty acids, this class of the lipids, it contains some additional groups. And what type of additional group is present? Based on that, the compound or the complex lipids are divided into many categories, okay, many groups, like say phospholipids. So phospholipids means it contains the phosphate. Then glycolipids, which contains the carbohydrate, sulfolipids, which contains the sulfate. So like that, based on that, what type of additional group is present, so this complex lipids, they are further divided into many classes. Okay, so first we are taking the phospholipid because it is the most important for the living organisms. Okay, so these are the complex or the compound lipids containing phosphoric acid in addition to the fatty acids, nitrogenous base, and the alcohol. Okay, so this group of the compounds, it contains the fatty acids, then it contains the alcohol, then in addition to that, it has a phosphoric acid, and sometimes it also has the nitrogenous base. So here additional group present is the phosphoric acid and the nitrogenous bases. There are two classes of the phospholipids. Okay, and the phospholipids again are grouped into two classes, that are the glycerophospholipids, means in which the alcohol present is the glycerol. Okay, so example, it is also called as the phosphoglycerides that contain glycerol as the alcohol. Then the second group is the sphingospholipids, in which the alcohol present is the sphingosine. Okay, sphingosine or its hydrated or dehydrated form. So here there is a difference in the alcohol present. It may be glycerol or it may be sphingosine or the dihydrosphingosin. So based on that, what type of alcohol is present, it is divided into two, as the glycerophospholipids and then sphingospholipids. Glycerophospholipids. Okay. So in phosphoglycerides, one of the primary hydroxyl group of the glycerol is esterified to phosphoric acid instead of fatty acid. So while discussing the glycerol or triacylglycerol, we have seen that all the three hydroxyl groups of the glycerol is esterified with the fatty acid. Means acids are linked to the glycerol. But in case of the glycerophospholipid, one of the hydroxyl group of the glycerol is not directly linked to the fatty acid, but here one phosphoric acid is linked to this. Okay, so the first carbon, second carbon, the OH group attached to first carbon and second carbon, they will be having the fatty acid. The fatty acids are linked to that, but the OH group attached to the third carbon, it is esterified with an acid, with a phosphoric acid instead of the fatty acid. Okay, thus the parent compound of this series is glycerol phosphoric acid rather than the glycerol. So here it is the glycerol phosphoric acid, but not the glycerol. We have the structure. We'll see that. In addition to the two fatty acid residues esterified to the hydroxyl group at the carbon atoms 1 and 2, most phosphoglycerides contain an alcohol component. Okay, so in addition to the fatty acid, it also has an alcohol component, which is represented by XOH. So X will be the hydrocarbon chain, then you have the OH group. So because of this presence of this OH group, it is an alcohol. Okay, whose hydroxyl group is esterified to the phosphoric acid to form the phosphodiester. So here, that alcohol, it is going to link to the phosphoric acid, which is attached to the carbon number 3, the OH group of the carbon number 3. The new alcohol component of the phosphoglycerides are, so here, that the new alcohol component that is going to link to phosphoric acid, it may be ethanol amine, it may be choline, it may be inositol, it may be serine. Okay, so this either ethanol, choline, inositol, or the serine is attached to the phosphoric acid. Okay, resulting in the formation of the phosphodidyl choline, phosphodidyl ethanol amine. So if the ethanol amine is the alcohol group attached, then the product or or the compound will be called as the phosphatidyl ethanolamine. If it is choline, then the phosphatidyl choline. If it is inositol, phosphatidyl inositol. If it is serine, then it is the phosphatidyl serine, respectively. Okay, so the different names will come based on the alcohol group present. Now here, this is the structure. Okay, you have the glycerol here. So the OH group attached to carbon number 1 and 2, you have the fatty acid links. Okay, so 2 fatty acids, it is linked to the OH group attached to carbon number 1 and the carbon number 2. Then to the carbon number 3, the OH group here, instead of this fatty acid, a phosphoric acid group is attached. Okay, so this compound, it is called as the phosphatidic acid. And this phosphatidic acid is also a phospholipid. Okay, next, let's see the number 2 structure, the structure 2. Here you have the two, this carbon number 1 and 2, it is same for all, so we are not going to discuss. So here fatty acid 1, fatty acid 2 is linked to carbon number 1 and 2, okay, through this OH group attached to carbon number 1 and 2. You have the carbon number 3 with the phosphoric acid. Okay, so if this another group is not attached, we call it a phosphatidic acid. Okay, so to this phosphatidic acid, if the alcohol group, another alcohol group is attached, so here it is the choline. So choline, you have it now, CH2, and then CH3 it is here. Okay, CH3, CH3, 3 groups, methyl groups are attached to the nitrogen. So this alcohol is linked to this phosphoric acid. So means another alcohol, it is linked to the phosphatidic acid. Okay. And then, so here, since this molecule is called choline, that name of this phospholipid will be called as the phosphatidyl choline. The common name is the lecithin. Okay. Next, the cephalin. If you see here, then alcoholic group present here, it is the ethanolamine. Okay, ethanolamine. So the chemical name will be phosphatidyl ethanolamine. Similarly, this is the structure of the inositol. This is the structure of the amino acid serine. So if inositol is attached, we call it the phosphatidyl inositol. If it is amino acid, the serine is attached, then it is called as the phosphatidyl serine. Okay. So these are the most common one, that is the phosphatidyl choline, phosphatidyl ethanolamine, phosphatidyl inositol, and phosphatidyl serine, the most common phospholipids. Okay. Then the others are also there. Here you have the plasmalogen. Okay, so this is the structure. Then the phosphatidyl glycerol. Okay, so another one is there. So here you have the phosphatidyl. Okay, phosphatidic acid, another phosphatidic acid. This is linked by another glycerol molecule here. Okay, so these are the products. Here one more structure it is given. And this is the structure of the phosphatidyl choline. Now you have this portion, which is background is the pink color. Okay, so in the pink color you have the glycerol here. Okay, carbon number 1, carbon number 2. So to the carbon number 1 and carbon number 2, 2 fatty acids are linked here. Okay, 2 fatty acids are linked here. Then you have the carbon number 3 here. To that carbon number 3, you have the phosphoric acid attached to that, and to the phosphoric acid, another alcohol is attached. So here it is the choline. Okay, so this is the structure of the phosphatidyl choline. Now this structure, so this phospholipid, if you see it, then you have the 2 acyl chains. So these 2 acyl chains, they are hydrophobic in nature. Okay, they are hydrophobic in nature. Then the head group here, it is hydrophilic in nature, and this is because that it has the phosphoric acid. Okay, it has the phosphoric acid. You have the alcohol here. So this group, it is hydrophobic in nature, means in the same molecule you have 2 portions. That one portion, that is the acyl chains. Okay, that the two fatty acid chains, which is hydrophobic in nature. Then you have the one group which is representing the glycerol, phosphoric acid, and the alcohol group which is hydrophilic in nature. So because of that, this is called as the head. Okay, so this hydrophilic group, we call it as the head, which is polar in nature. Then you have the two tails. These tails are the fatty acid chains, okay, which are hydrophobic in nature. So it is an amphibolic molecule. The phospholipid is an amphibolic molecule because it has the hydrophilic group, it has the hydrophobic group. So since both hydrophilic and hydrophobic group is present, they are amphibolic in nature. Okay. Now this is the structure that we are going to say it, and since these phospholipids, most of these phospholipids, they are not the deposit form of the lipids. They are the structural components of the biological membrane. Okay, so in biological membrane, when we show it here, that it is forming two layers. Okay, the outer layer, it is occupied by the hydrophilic group. Then inside of the bilayer, it is occupied by the hydrophobic groups. Okay. So let's see the properties of the phosphoglycerides. Okay. The first is that the pure phosphoglycerides are quite waxy solids. Okay, they are quite waxy solids, but on exposure to the air, they becomes dark and undergoes complex chemical changes because of the tendency of their unsaturated fatty acid components to be peroxidized by the atmospheric oxygen. So when it is not exposed to the air, okay, the fresh phospholipid glycerides, they will be quite waxy solids. But if you expose it, then when it is exposed, then the molecular oxygen will react with the double bonds present in the fatty acid side chain. Okay? So because of that, there may be formation of the epoxides, then some of the chains fragmentation may be there, then some of the fatty acids, it may be removed from the glycerol component. Okay, so because of this, that exposure to the air, it becomes dark. They are soluble, most of this, they are soluble in the non-polar solvents containing some amount of the water. If it is a pure organic solvent, they will not be dissolved because it also has the hydrophilic part. Okay? So since some hydrophilic part is also present in this type of molecules, so they will be dissolving in the organic solvents which contains some amount of the water. They are the most polar of the lipids, and all of them have the negative charges. Okay? So they are the most polar group, they have the negative charges, and this negative charge is because of the presence of the phosphate group in the hydrophilic head group. Okay? The variation in the size, shape, polarity, and the charge of the polar head group play a very significant role in the structure of the micelles, monolayer, and the bilayers of the lipids. Okay, what is the function? The function of the phospholipids. So first thing is that the first and the most important function of the phospholipid is that they are the components of the biological membranes. Okay, so in association with the proteins, phospholipids form the structural component of the membranes and regulate membrane permeability. Okay, so this how the membrane will be permeable and all that. This is all regulated by the phospholipids. Okay. So that they are the major component of the biological membrane is the phospholipids. Phospholipids, that is lecithin, cephalin, and cardiolipin, in the mitochondria are responsible for maintaining the conformation of the electron transport chain. Now, these electron transport carriers, we'll be studying it later on in the unit 2, that these are the protein complexes. Okay, these are the protein complexes which are found embedded in the inner membrane of the mitochondria. So their structure and all, it is maintained by the phospholipids. So phospholipids, they are a part of the inner membrane of the mitochondria, and they are responsible for maintaining the structure of the proteins. And these proteins are the electron transporters. Okay. So these phospholipids, they are responsible for maintaining the conformation of electron transport chain components. Thus, they are responsible for the cellular respiration, because if the conformation of the protein complexes, they are not maintained, they cannot perform the function. Okay, so that means this protein conformation, it has to be maintained, and how it is maintained by the phospholipid. That means the phospholipids are responsible for maintaining the conformation, which ultimately controls the cellular respiration. Phospholipids participate in the absorption of the fat from the intestine. So when the fat is absorbed in the intestine, then it is held by the phospholipid. If it is not there, it may not be possible to absorb the fats. Accumulation of the fat in the liver, which we call it as the fatty liver, can be prevented by the phospholipids. Hence, they are regarded as the lipotrophic factors. Okay, so that the heavy deposition of the fats in the liver, it can be prevented by the phospholipids. Means it can help in the removal of this lipids accumulation in the liver. Phospholipids participates in the reverse cholesterol transport. Okay, and thus help in the removal of the cholesterol from the body. Okay. Phospholipids acts as the surfactants, the agents lowering the surface tension. Okay, this is one function. Then one phospholipid, that is the cephalins, it participates in the blood clotting. You have to remember this one because this is a very rare case. So in the objective question, it used to come that the phospholipids which participate in the blood clotting. So the answer is the cephalin. So cephalins, it participates in the blood clotting. Then phosphatidyl ionositol, they are involved in the signal transmission. Okay, across biological membrane. So what happens is that the signal, it may be the hormones, so it comes and binds to the cell membranes. Okay, then from the cell membrane through the receptors, it transmits the signal inside the cytoplasm. Then this phospholipid, the phosphatidyl ionositol, it may be ionized, it may be degraded. Then one component, it carries the information to the organelles present in the cell, the cellular organelles. So that means the phosphatidyl ionositol is involved in the signal transmission across the biological membranes. Phospholipids are essential components of the bile, where they act as a detergent and help in the solubilization of the cholesterol. Okay, so that is how they are helping in the removal of the cholesterol. Okay, so these are just some of the important functions performed by the phospholipids. Okay. Next is the sphingolipids. So they are found in the membranes of the body of plants and animals. These sphingolipids, they are found in the membranes of the plants and animals. They are present in large amount in the brain and the nerve tissues. Only minor amounts may be present as deposit fat. So deposit fat is mainly the triacylglycerols. Okay, so most of the sphingolipids, they will be present in the membranes. On hydrolysis, sphingolipids yield one molecule of the fatty acid, one molecule of long-chain unsaturated amino alcohol, which may be the sphingosine or its saturated analog, that is the dihydrosphingosine, and a polar head group attached to one hydroxyl of the sphingosine. So what it contains? It contains one fatty acid, one alcohol, which may be sphingosine or the dihydrosphingosine, a polar head group. Okay, so these are the components. So when the sphingolipids, they are hydrolyzed, then they will be getting these components. So it does not contain the glycerol, okay, because instead of glycerol, the sphingosine or the dihydrosphingosine is present. Okay, so here this is a structure. Okay, this is the structure of the sphingosine or its unsaturated or saturated analog, that is the dihydrosphingosine. Okay, here double bond is not present. In this case, the double bond is present. Okay. So you have the group here. So here that fatty acid is linked to this OH group. Okay, then you have the amine group, then this one, the other group. Okay. Next is the glycolipids. So the name suggests that glyco means it is carbohydrate. So these are the lipids which contains carbohydrates. So glycolipids are the important constituents of the cell membranes and the nervous tissues. The membrane, earlier we discussed that the carbohydrates are important because they act as the receptors. Okay, so these glycolipids, they are the important constituents of the cell membranes and the nervous tissues. They contain polar hydrophilic carbohydrates head groups. Most often, that carbohydrate group present is D-galactose or the D-glucose. Okay, so they contain the carbohydrate, and in most of the cases, the carbohydrate present is the D-galactose or the D-glucose. The examples of the glycolipids is cerebrosides and the gangliosides. Okay, cerebrosides and the gangliosides are the examples of the glycolipids. We'll see that what are the cerebrosides and gangliosides. Cerebrosides, they contain galactose. Okay, just remember this one. The cerebrosides, it contains the galactose, a high molecular fatty acid, and a sphingosine. Okay, therefore they are classified as the sphingolipids because here the alcohol present is sphingosine. So since those lipids which contains the sphingosine as the alcohol, we classify as the sphingolipids. So here also in this case of the cerebrosides, also the alcohol present is sphingosine. So they are also classified under the sphingolipids. They are the chief constituents of the myelin sheath. They are further classified into many groups depending on the type of the fatty acid present. So depending on what type of fatty acid is present, they are further divided into many groups. The examples are that kerosene. Okay, kerosene, it is one type of the cerebroside. So kerosene, here the fatty acid present is the lingoacetic acid. That is a fatty acid containing 24 carbon atoms. It is a saturated fatty acid with the 24 carbon atoms. Okay, then in case of the cerebron, then it is here the fatty acid present is the hydroxylignoacetic acid. Okay, so this is just the chemical structure that I'm giving it here. Then the nervone containing the unsaturated homologue of the lignoacetic acid, which is called as the nervonic acid. Then oxynervone containing the hydroxynervonic acid. So here we see that all these are same, and the difference comes only in the type of the fatty acid present. So depending on the type of the fatty acid present, there are different types of the cerebrosides. Next is the gangliosides, which is a type of the glycolipids. Okay, so these are the glycolipids occurring in the brain. Then they contain ceramide. Okay, ceramide is the sphingosine and fatty acid, glucose, galactose, and acetyl-galactosamine, and the salicylic acid. Most of the gangliosides contain a glucose, 2 molecules of the galactose, 1 N-acetyl-galactosamine, and up to 3 molecules of the salicylic acid. So structure I'm not giving it here. Now next comes the lipoproteins. Okay, so lipoproteins. So these are the polar lipids associated with certain specific proteins to form the lipoproteins. Okay, so the name itself is suggested it contains the protein. So it is a combination of the lipids with the protein. So polar lipids associated with the certain specific proteins to form the lipoproteins. The best known among them are the transport lipoproteins. Okay, so there are different types of the lipoproteins. Among them, the best known is the transport lipoproteins of the mammalian blood plasma, and these are 5 types are there, and these are chylomicrons, very low density lipoproteins. In short, we call it as the VLDL, low density lipoproteins, high density lipoproteins, free fatty acid albumin complexes. Okay, so these are the different types of the lipoproteins that are present in the mammalian blood system, in the plasma. Okay, blood plasma of the mammalians. In these conjugated proteins, okay, so no covalent linkage exists between the lipids and the protein component. So that there is no covalent linkages between the protein and the lipid. Lipoproteins usually contain both a polar and a neutral lipids, as well as the cholesterol and its esters. Okay? So they'll be containing the neutral and the polar lipids. Some amount of the cholesterol and their esters also may be present. They serve as the vehicles for the transport of lipids from the small intestine to the liver, and from liver to fat depots and various other tissues. So the name itself, in the previous slide we have discussed that these are the transport protein. Okay, so the function of this lipoprotein is that they act as a vehicle for transporting the lipids, okay, from the small intestine to the liver, and then from liver to the other sites. Okay, next group, it is that of the miscellaneous lipids. So these are the steroids. Okay. So steroids are the compounds containing a cyclic steroid nucleus. So any compound which contains a cyclic steroid nucleus or the ring system, which is called as the cyclopentanoparhydrophenanthrene. Okay, so these 4 ring structures, that is A, B, C, D. If any lipid, if it contains this ring structure, then that compound will be classified as the steroid. So steroids are those compounds which contain a cyclic ring nucleus, which is called as the cyclopentanoparhydrophenanthrene ring. In short, it is called as the CPPP. Okay, cyclopentanoparhydrophenanthrene ring. So any compounds which contains this nucleus, okay, the steroid nucleus, is classified as the steroids. It consists of a phenanthrene nucleus, that is the ring A, B, and C, and to which a cyclopentano ring, that is the ring D, is attached. The steroid nucleus represents the saturated carbons unless specifically shown as a double bond. So here we don't see any double bond here. Okay, so that means it is a saturated. It is a saturated ring structure. If any double bond is present, then it has to be specifically shown. The methyl side chains are present at the carbon number 10. Okay, so this carbon number 19. This is a methyl side chain CH3 group attached to carbon number 10. Then another one CH3 group, it is attached to carbon number 13. So carbon number 18 and 19, these are the methyl groups attached to carbon number 13 and carbon number 10. Okay. Besides this, there's a side chain is also attached to the carbon number 17. Okay. The methyl chains, that is carbon number 19 and 19 attached to at the carbon 10 and the 13 are shown as the single bonds. Then at carbon 17. At this particular carbon, the steroids usually contain a side chain. Okay. So if you see the structure of the cholesterol and all that, it has 27 carbon. Okay. So that means that is due to the presence of the side chain attached to carbon number 17. Okay. There are several steroids in the biological system. So we know that then there are many hormones. Okay. There are many hormones then that which are the derivatives of the steroids. These include cholesterol, the bile acids, vitamin D, sex hormones, adrenocortical hormones, steroids, cytosteroids, cardiac glycosides, and alkaloids. So all these are derivatives of the steroid. Okay. If the steroid contains one or more hydroxyl groups, okay, it is commonly known as the steroid. So if a OH group is attached, then it is called as estrolol. So means it is the solid alcohol. Okay, next is the cholesterol. So cholesterol is exclusively found in animals and is the most abundant animal cholesterol. Okay, it contains a OH group here. So here one OH group is attached to carbon number 3. So in the previous slide, we have seen that if an hydroxyl group is attached, it is called as esterol. So since the alcohol, the cholesterol, it contains one hydroxyl group, it is called as an esterol. And since they are present only in the animal system, they are the animal esterol. It is widely distributed in the cells, that is components of the biological membranes and the lipoproteins. It is derived from Greek word, kol means bile, because it was first isolated from the bile. Literally, it means solid alcohol from the bile. Okay. Structurally, it has one hydroxyl group attached at the carbon number 3 and a double bond between carbon number 5 and 6. Then the side chain at the carbon number 17. And 8 carbon aliphatic side chain is attached at the carbon number 17. That is this one. Okay. So this is the structure of the cholesterol. It contains a total of 5 methyl groups. Okay. Next, the last topic that is mentioned in your syllabus is the prostaglandins. Okay. I have around 10 slides. I think we can go. Still, we have more than 10 minutes, so we can complete the lipid part today. Do you have any question? If you have any question, then we can repeat that again. Otherwise, I'll proceed to the prostaglandins. Yes, anyone? Any question? Hello, is my voice coming to you? Is my voice audible?
Yes, sir.
Sir.
Do you have any question?
No,
Shall
sir.
shall I proceed to the next topic? That is prostaglandins.
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'm proceeding to that, and this is the last topic of the lipid part. Okay, so next, I think we will finish this today. Then next we can go to the nucleic acids from the next week. Okay, so prostaglandins and their related compounds. The other related compounds, it is the prostacyclins. Okay, then thromboxanes, leukotrienes. These are collectively known as the eicosanoids. So all these, the prostaglandins and their derivatives, all this is collectively called as the eicosanoids. Since they all contain 20 carbon. Why they are called as the eicosanoids? Because the number of carbon atoms present in this group of the compounds is 20. So since the number of carbon atoms present is 20, it is collectively called as the eicosanoids. So what does the eicosanoids include? Eicosanoids includes the prostaglandins, then related compounds like the prostacyclins, thromboxanes, and the leukotrienes. They are considered as locally acting hormones. Okay, they are considered as the hormones, but which has the effect in the cell itself or its neighboring cell. Okay, so eicosanoids are considered as the locally acting hormones with a wide range of biochemical functions. The function, it has a very wide range of the functions. Even in the same cell, they may have the antagonistic effects. Okay, the opposite effects it may have. So that we'll see it when we discuss the functions of the prostaglandins. Okay, so prostaglandins were first discovered in the human semen by the Ulf von Uller of Sweden in 1930. These compounds were found to stimulate uterine contraction. Okay. Initially, it was found that they stimulate the uterine contraction and reduce the blood pressure. Okay. So von Uller, he presumed that they were synthesized by prostate gland, and hence they named them as the prostaglandins. So initially, it was thought that they are synthesized from the prostate gland. So because of that, the name prostaglandins has come. Prostaglandins are derivatives of a hypothetical 20 carbon fatty acid, namely the prostaglandinic acid. Okay, they are called as the eicosanoids also, but hypothetically, it is believed that they are the derivatives of the 20 carbon fatty acid, that is the prostaglandinic acid. So since they are believed to be the derivative of this prostaglandinic acid, they are called as the this one prostaglandins. Okay, hence they are known as the prostanoids. Prostaglandins has a cyclopentanone ring, means a 5-member ring is present. And how this 5-member ring is formed? It is formed by the carbon atoms 8 to 12. So a link is formed between carbon number 8 and 12. So since there is a link, carbon number 8 and 12 is linked. Okay, then that carbon number 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, this is going to form a ring structure, that a 5-member ring structure. So it has a cyclopentane ring, and this carbon number 1 to 7, then carbon number 13 to 20, they are going to form the 2 side chains. The 2 side chains will be formed with carboxyl group on one side. Okay. They differ in their structure due to the substituent groups and the double bonds on the cyclopentane. So there are different types of the prostaglandins. So how they differ, how the different prostaglandins differ, it differs on that at what position the double bond is present and what are the groups, the functional groups are present in this ring structure, that the cyclopentane ring. Okay, so the position of the double bond and also the groups attached to this ring, it makes difference between the different prostaglandins. Okay, let's see here. Now you have the prostaglandinic acid. Okay, so here is a prostaglandinic acid. There is a link between carbon number 8 and 12. Okay, so here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it is a 5-member ring is there. Then from carbon number 1 to carbon number 8, it forms one side chain. then carbon number 13 to carbon number 20, this is forming the another side chain. So there are two side chains, one attached to carbon number 8, another attached to carbon number 12. Okay, then there's a 5-member ring formed by linking the carbon number 8 to carbon number 12. This is the structure of the prostaglandinic acid. Okay, so this is the parent compound. Okay, the parent compound for the prostaglandins. When the different groups are attached, then it forms the different type of prostaglandins. Let's see here in the PGA. Okay, prostaglandin PGA. Here the double bond is present between carbon number 10 and 11. So here this double bond is present, that is carbon number 10 and 11. And secondly, a keto group is attached to carbon number 9. Okay, so when a keto group is attached to the carbon number 9 and the double bond is present between carbon number 9, 10 and 11, it becomes the PGA. Let's see for the PGB, this is prostaglandin B. So here the double bond is present between carbon number 8 and 12. Okay, so here that double bond is between carbon number 8 and 12. Then oxy group is, keto group is attached to carbon number 9. In C, the prostaglandin C, the double bond is present between carbon number 11 and 12. Then keto group is present at the carbon number 9. Then in D, that double bond is not present, but one hydroxyl group is attached to carbon number 1 and keto group is attached to carbon number 11. Okay, so these are the different. So here, from here, we know that the difference between the different prostaglandins, it is coming on the functional group, what type of functional group is present, and if that functional groups are attached to which carbon. So that decides the different types of the prostaglandins. Okay, it may be a little bit difficult, but you need to know this one. Okay, synthesis, how they are synthesized. Okay, how the prostaglandins are synthesized in the body. So prostaglandins, it should come from fatty acids. Okay, then how it is formed? Let's see that. It is mainly done in the endoplasmic reticulum. So arachidonic acid is the precursor for most of the prostaglandins in the human. So in case of the human beings, the precursor for synthesis of the prostaglandins, it is the arachidonic acid. Hello. Okay. I'm taking class after this also. Okay, thank you. Okay, so they are derived, that precursor, it is the arachidonic acid. It occurs in the endoplasmic reticulum in following steps. So it is synthesized in the endoplasmic reticulum, and the step is that the first is the release of the arachidonic acid from the membrane. The membrane bound phospholipids. So phospholipids, we know that is present in the component as a component of the membrane. So from here, the arachidonic acid is released. How it is released? It has to be acted upon by some lipase to release the arachidonic acid. So release of the arachidonic acid from the membrane-bound phospholipids by the phospholipase A2. This reaction occurs due to specific stimuli by the hormones such as epinephrine or the bradykinin. So when the cell receives the signal, then this enzyme, it is activated, and this enzyme acts on the phospholipid to release this fatty acid. That is the arachidonic acid. Okay. Then next is the oxidation and cyclization of the arachidonic acid to PGG2, which is then converted to PGH2 by the reduced glutathione dependent peroxidation. So other enzymes, the further processing is that this arachidonic acid, it is oxidized. Okay, there is oxidation, then cyclization, that is formation of the cyclic structure to form the PGG2 and PGH2. Okay, so here that in the next slide, that steps will be shown again. Then PGH2 serves as the immediate precursor for the synthesis of a number of the prostaglandins, including the prostacyclins and the thromboxane. So earlier in the first slide, when we discussed about the prostaglandins, we have seen that it's related compounds. Okay, that is prostacyclin, thromboxanes, leukotrienes, and all that. So all this just synthesized from a common precursor. Okay, See here, you have the phospholipids, okay, which is present as a component of the biological membrane. So phospholipids, it is the membrane bound. This is acted upon by the phospholipase 2. Okay, the phospholipase 2, it is activated when the cell receives some signal from the epinephrine, bendikinin, etc. When some signal is given to the cell, then this particular enzyme, it is activated, and because of that, it acts on the phospholipid to release the arachidonic acid. Okay. Now this can be blocked by the corticosteroids. Okay, so you'll find that some of the drugs to inhibit the fever, the pain, inflammation, and all that. These are all related to the prostaglandins. Okay, so this can be inhibited by the corticosteroids. Okay, then this arachidonic acid, by 5-lipoxyoxygenase, it can be converted to the 5-SPETE, then which can convert it to the leukotrienes. Okay, this is not important for you, so I'm not going to the details of this one. Then arachidonic acid, it is acted upon by the cyclooxygenase. So in the second step, we have seen that once the arachidonic acid is formed, then next step is the oxidation and cyclization. Okay, so that is done by the cyclooxygenase to convert it to PGG2. Okay, so this PGG2, once it is formed, now this formation, or you can say that the cyclooxygenase system, this can be inhibited by the aspirin, phenylbutazone, okay, indomethacin, ibuprofen. So these drugs, you have seen that when you have the headache or some inflammation or all that, why we are taking that medicine is just to block the synthesis of the prostaglandins. Okay, because prostaglandins are responsible for that type of the effect. If we can block the synthesis of the prostaglandins, that the defects will not be there. So that is the reason that why we give this type of the medicine. Okay, so this can be inhibited by this type of the this medicines. Okay. Then once this PGG2 is formed, then it is acted upon by the peroxidase to form the PGH2. Okay, so this is the reduced glutathione. The reduced glutathione, 2 molecules of the glutathione, this oxidized to form the glutathione here. Okay, so this is reduced to PGH2. Then once this PGH2 is formed, then it leads to the production of the other this one, that compounds, that is the PGI2, PGF2 alpha, PGE2, the TXA2, etc. Okay, all this, that the different enzyme systems are present in the system, so they will be acting upon the PGH2 to form these products. Okay, so this is how the prostaglandins and the related compounds are synthesized in the body in case of the human beings. Inhibitors I have already discussed. So these are the inhibitors. The first one is the corticosteroids. It inhibits the phospholipids. Then the cyclooxygenase, it can be inhibited by this medicine. So a number of structurally related compounds can inhibit the prostaglandin synthesis, like corticosteroids. Example, cortisol prevent the formation of the arachidonic acid. So you just go through it. I have already explained this one. I'll not go through it again. Okay. Now, function, that the biochemical action of the prostaglandins. So prostaglandins are local hormones. Okay, local hormones. However, differ from the true hormones in many ways. Okay, they are the local hormone. They act as a local hormones, but they differ from the other normal hormones. Okay, how they differ it? That prostaglandins are produced in almost all the tissues, in contrast to the hormones synthesis which occurs in the specialized glands. So in case of the hormones, we know that they are synthesized in the special glands, which we call it as the endocrine glands. Okay, but the prostaglandins, they are synthesized in almost all the tissues or the cells. Then prostaglandins are not stored, and they are degraded to inactive products at the site of their production. So hormones, it is synthesized when it is required, it is released, get it by the blood, it acts in the cells, to a distant cell. But this is not the case in the case of the prostaglandins. Then third is that prostaglandins are produced in the very small amounts and have the low half-lives. They are not stored. When they are required, they will be produced. They act their this one. They express their action, then they will be removed. The action of the prostaglandins differ in the different tissues. So this is not the case in case of the normal hormones. In case of the normal hormones, it goes to the specific site, it performs the function. But here, the prostaglandins, it differ in different tissues. So in one tissue, it will have one effect. On the other tissue, this will have another effect. Sometimes the prostaglandins bring about the opposite actions in the same tissue. In the same tissue also, they may have the antagonistic effects that are different. Then overproduction of the prostaglandins results in many symptoms like pain, okay, fever, nausea, vomiting, inflammation, etc. So different types of the symptoms it may be found if that if there is overproduction of the prostaglandins. They mediate the regulation of the blood pressure, inflammatory responses, blood clotting, reproductive functions, response to pain and the fever. How they regulate the blood pressure? So regulation of the blood pressure. So prostaglandins, that is PGE-A-I2, are vasodilators, okay, which results in the increased blood flow and the decreased peripheral resistance to lower the blood pressure. So this is one of the functions. Okay, they increases the blood flow. They serve as the agents in the treatment of the hypertension. In case of the inflammation, so the prostaglandins, that is I1 and I2, induce the symptoms of inflammation like the redness, swelling, edema, etc. due to anterior vasodilation. Okay. The corticosteroids are frequently used to treat these inflammatory reactions because if we can block the synthesis of the prostaglandins, then these problems will be solved. Okay, so because of that, the corticosteroids which can block the hydrolysis of the arachidonic acid. Okay, if it is blocked, the arachidonic acid will not be produced. If it is not produced, then the prostaglandins will not be produced. Okay. Reproduction. So prostaglandin E2 and F2 are used for medical termination of pregnancy. If you want to terminate the pregnancy, then these two prostaglandins may be used, and the induction of the labor. The prostaglandins are administered to the cattle, induce stress and achieve better rate of the fertilization. In case of the pain and fever, so pyrogens, that is the fever-producing agents, promote prostaglandin biosynthesis, leading to formation of the PGE2 in hypothalamus, the site of regulation of the body temperature. Okay. So PGE2, along with the histamine and the bradykinin, causes the pain. Migraine is also due to the PGE2. Aspirin and other non-steroidal drugs inhibit the prostaglandin synthesis. So if we give this medicine, then this prostaglandins will not be synthesized, then will not have all these problems. Okay. So this medicines, it is used just to block the synthesis of the prostaglandins. Regulation of the gastric secretion. So prostaglandins, that is the PGE, inhibited gastric secretion, so used for the treatment of the gastric ulcers. The prostaglandins stimulate the pancreatic secretion and increases the motility of intestine, which often causes the diarrhea. Influence on the immune system. So macrophages secretes the PGE, which decreases the immunological functions of the beta and the T lymphocytes. Effects on the respiratory function. So the PGE is the bronchodilator, whereas PGF acts as a constrictor, okay, of the bronchial smooth functions. So these are just the opposite in their actions. Influence on renal function. So PGE increases the GFR and promotes the urine output. The excretion of the sodium and potassium is also increased. Okay. Effects on the metabolism. So prostaglandins influence certain metabolic reactions, probably through the mediation of the cyclic AMP. The PGE decreases the lipolysis, increases the glycogen formation, and promotes the calcium mobilization from the bone. So all these things you need to know it. Okay, just there is nothing much to explain, but you have to go through it and remember it. Okay, next is the platelet aggregation and the thrombosis. Okay, so PGI PGI2 inhibit platelet aggregation. PGI2 produced by the endothelial cells lining the blood vessels, prevent the adhesion of the platelets to the blood vessels. Okay. Then thromboxanes and the PGE2 promotes the platelet aggregation and the blood clotting that might lead to the thrombosis. Then TXA2 is released by the platelets and is responsible for their spontaneous aggregation when platelets come in contact with a foreign substance, collagen and thrombosin. Okay. Simply, there is nothing much to explain, so I'm not giving the explanation, but you need to remember it. This is just, you have to memorize it. Okay. I think this is all. Let's just go through it. Liquid trends, it is no need for you to learn it, so we are not discussing it. Okay. So with this, we finished this one. With this, we finish the lipids. So if you have any question, then we can discuss it, or maybe in the next class also we can discuss it. Okay. Do you have any question in this, or shall we stop here? Yes, anyone? You have any question? So let's stop here. Probably no one is responding. So I assume that there is no question. We'll stop here. Okay. Let's meet next week. We'll be starting with the nucleic acids. So let's stop here for today.
Thank you, sir.